Asha, Asha, echoed the voice of the lady standing at the entranceway. She knew she had to call the dog by her proper title to get a response. Her spouse muttered disdainfully as he strolled past. Now you're bellowing, and it's hard to tell if you're summoning a human or a canine. I wasn't consulted on this. Quick to fire back, the woman debated. I asked for the safety boundaries to be fixed so Asha couldn't run off, but as usual, you didn't bother to help, he rebutted. There's no point in repairing them if the gates are always left open. They can't be bolted since you want your chatty friends to visit us freely. Keep my friends out of this, she retorted. Absorbed in their exchange, the couple failed to notice their surroundings. They bickered while oblivious to the responding dog that hurriedly skidded over. Asha peeked from the side of the house, hesitant to approach. The canine disliked it when humans argued. Asha had come from the streets, knowing little of human tenderness, until a compassionate soul admitted her to an animal sanctuary. There, a young lady became her benevolent owner, teaching Asha about amicable bonds. However, the lady soon received an enticing career opportunity overseas and found herself short on time to manage the necessary paperwork for Asha. As a solution, she relocated her beloved pet to her parents' rural residence. If you're drawn to heartfelt tales like Asha's, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Your support helps us share more stories like this one, and we'd love to have you with us as the story unfolds. This dwelling was markedly different from Asha's former comfortable habitat. Unlike her urban home, where she was allowed to recline on sofas or curiously observe from the dining table, the country house had stringent norms. The dog was often puzzled about her status in the household. No sofas to lie on and no entry to the indoors were granted. Banished to the yard, her resting space was confined under an awning near the main door. His daughter had entreated her parents to construct a pen for the mutt, but her pleas fell on deaf paternal ears. I wouldn't go to such trouble for just a dog. I can justify building a shed for a cow or a fenced area for poultry. At least they provide some utility. But a dog, she won't last. We can always get a replacement if one passes away, he reasoned. Thus, Asha was left without confinement. The idea of leashing her was brushed aside due to her owner's stern objection. She got her father to vow that Asha wouldn't be restricted by a leash. She assured her parents that as soon as she settled into her new position overseas, she would claim her canine companion. The elderly couple conceded to their daughter's wish. Nonetheless, her new job required consistent travel, posing a significant challenge. Asha's original family could not bring her along due to constraints during their journey, resulting in her residence with the girl's parents. This new environment was challenging for Asha, as she wasn't accustomed to it, and relationships with the yard's inhabitants were notably strained. She had ruffled feathers with the goat and the cow, both attempting to butt heads with her. The resident flock of chickens aimed for her forehead, and the cat's feral hisses kept her from making direct eye contact. The patriarch dog of the household was displeased with Asha encroaching on his territory. The different food and the liberty that accompanied her new location upset the resident dog. Asha had what he desired, which is why he constantly barked and tried to bite her. Recognizing the potential harm, Asha wisely maintained her distance. The initial few days saw Asha sticking close to her parental figures, often resulting in scoldings or even physical reprimands. This new addition, constantly underfoot, became a source of frustration for them. Asha had no choice but to vacate the yard, seeking sanctuary elsewhere. The yard's fence, with its many gaps, made it possible for even the bulky St. Bernard to crawl through, an easy feat for a slender, agile Asha. Thus, Asha began her daily exploration outside the yard, venturing into the neighborhood and returning home only for meals and at sundown. Initially, she explored the derelict nearby properties, later expanding her horizons to the fields further away. The newfound freedom brought joy to the canine, basking in the pleasure of her discoveries and charting her own path. On one occasion, Asha returned to the yard for her midday meal, responding to the call of her parental figures. However, on arrival, she was met with a cacophony, triggering fear and retreat. She was a veteran of many such heated confrontations. The pattern of people exhausting their anger on each other before redirecting their wrath to anyone close by often placed Asha in the line of fire. A previous encounter lingered painfully in her memory, making her hastily retreat from the yard this time. Finding her way out through the opposite side of the house, Asha sought refuge in a sprawling open area surrounded by spaced-out houses and fields. The local dwellers, who considered themselves rigorous caretakers of their property, kept her on her toes and pushed her to venture further into an uncultivated meadow. She was famished, yet refrained from returning, due to the fear of another confrontation with her parental figures. Hungry and roaming, Asha searched the meadow with a dissatisfied nose for food. The mucky ground beneath her and dew-soaked foliage from the previous night's rain did little to dampen her spirits. Her feet turned black, yet the canine stayed tranquil. Her new guardians did not concern themselves with hygiene. How does it matter if the pet isn't allowed inside the home? Suddenly, her sharp sense of smell detected an unfamiliar odor. It was something animate that she had never stumbled upon. Driven by curiosity, Asha forged ahead. She found a big patch of muddy water lying ahead. But this wasn't about to deter her. The tantalizing aroma was on the other side of this hurdle. There wasn't time to circumvent it, so Asha charged straight on with all her energy. After the initial leap, she couldn't regain her steadiness. Her feet skidded erratically through the muddy slush. Asha made futile attempts to halt, but her momentum plunged her right into the puddle's core. To her astonishment, it was not a puddle, but an actual bog. The persistent rainfall had thoroughly soaked the soil and accumulated in a tiny depression. The mud from the surroundings drained into the pit, filling it to the top. Being a small-sized dog, Asha nearly submerged in the sticky goo. The canine attempted to find footing, but her feet kept slipping. She sank deeper into the mud. In a last-ditch effort to extricate herself, Asha started to swim. She had done this effectively before, but unlike water, the tenacious mud hindered her from moving her paws properly. The thick substance trapped her firmly. Asha made repeated efforts, but to no avail. She couldn't find her way to solid ground. When her limbs started aching from the struggle, the canine desisted. Asha gave out pitiful whines in the hope that someone would hear and rescue her. But she had wandered too far from any human dwellers, and people, with their flawed hearing, did not pick up her distress calls. The canine barked and cried until she grew hoarse. Finally, she had no choice but to lie ear-deep in mud, awaiting her dreadfully tragic end. Just like other villagers, Pavel was in the agriculture business, albeit on a grand scale. This man rented out all the expansive fields encircling the village. He continually hired help for their tending. Problems sprouted. Some workers were dedicated year after year, rewarded with incentives and recreational trips, but others were merely merrymakers or indolent, demanding equal treatment despite their lack of effort. Pavel scrutinized these workers constantly. During the day, he'd suddenly show up for a quick check, watching their progress. The workers soon understood his habits and began sharing news among themselves. Whenever Pavel drove from the village to the fields, one of them would alert the others. They would waste no time finding their places on tractors and combines, so by the time Pavel arrived for inspection, they appeared busy. Yet somehow they managed to do barely anything. To outsmart these crafty workers, Pavel devised a plan. He journeyed on foot, traversing vegetable patches and meadows, heading straight for the fields. His lengthy walk was tiring, but seemed worthwhile. When he got there, he discovered his employees leisurely sitting under a tree, engrossed in a card game. He reproached them, warning of potential job loss if the work wasn't completed by sundown, then turned to take off. Regrettably, the man wished he had carried his bicycle. On foot, a straightforward route was possible. Pavel was halfway through the meadow when he began hearing unusual noises, sounds that were neither growls nor wheezes. Immediately, he spun around to identify the source of these peculiar noises and was taken aback by the sight. Sticking out in the midst of a vast muddy puddle was a dog's head. The creature gazed at Pavel with an intense mixture of certainty and hope that sent chills down his spine. Now, he raised his hand in a pacifying manner. "Don't you worry, I'll pull you out of there." The words seemed to energize the dog a bit, as it attempted to lift its head higher and clumsily tried pawing at the mess it was stuck in. Observing the animal's frail movements, Pavel decided against stepping into the mud to free it. If he got stuck too, it would only create more problems. Instead, he surveyed the surroundings for anything that could serve as support or leverage. Unfortunately, everything around was mere grassland. "Stay right there, I'll be back shortly," Pavel instructed the animal, even though it had no means or place to go. Speedily, he rushed towards the populated part of the village, where he was a familiar face. Pavel entered the nearest yard, requesting a broad plank from the residents. The well-stocked locals had an extensive inventory, including the required plank. Soon after, Pavel was back at the dog's location. He skillfully threw the plank across the muddy pit, securing a path to the center where the dog was helplessly struggling. Attempting to retrieve the dog was daunting. The stubborn mud refused to release its captive. The small, weak creature was impossible to grasp as Pavel's fingers kept slipping. He pushed his sleeves up to his elbows and bravely plunged his hands into the sludge, searching for a grip under the animal's front legs. The dense mud had immobilized the poor dog, making it feel much heavier. While doing his best to maintain balance, Pavel noticed the plank wobbling with his weight. Pavel nearly lost his footing, but adeptly altered his step to keep from splashing into the puddle. The dog was certainly not making things easier. On the contrary, savoring its newfound sense of liberation, it began a joyful flutter of its body, aiming to nuzzle the hands of its rescuer. The wet, muddy canine nearly sprang back into the soup due to its excitement. However, Pavel managed fine. He gently set the dog down on the ground. Sapped of energy, Asha couldn't muster any movement. She crumpled onto the grass, not attempting to rise. "Hey, what's happening with you?" Pavel queried, alarmed. He plucked a few bundles of grass, using them to cleanse the filth from Asha's fur. Seemingly, Asha felt rejuvenated immediately. She even endeavored to pull herself up. Her exhausted legs trembled, yet bore her weight. Euphorically, Asha nuzzled against Pavel. "Aw, man," Pavel cussed. He had earnestly tried to keep the muck off himself, and now look, his pants bore the evidence of his struggles. But he couldn't harbor animosity for Asha. The look in her eyes was so filled with thankfulness and happiness that he was confident she had not intended to do this. The gentleman picked up the plank that still required returning to its rightful owners and embarked on his journey back. Meanwhile, Asha darted down a different path, heading for her abode. Pavel's mucky presence garnered widespread attention from everyone he encountered. He found himself revisiting his adventure with Asha repeatedly. In this small community, news traveled at light speed, ensuring Asha's rescue tale reached her owners virtually at the same time she did. Her humans were distressed, which resulted in them resuming discussions about arranging a kennel, or at least securing her with a leash. After cleaning up Asha, they decided to express their gratitude to Pavel for his kindness. Firstly, he had done them a great service, and secondly, they didn't want to seem ungrateful to a man influential in their community. Pavel was startled when he saw his schoolmates' parents at his door. His surprise escalated when he discovered the beautiful Asha by their side was the same scruffy creature he had rescued from imminent drowning in slime. He had only glimpsed a relatively clean portion of Asha's face back then, but now he found himself in awe of her fully cleaned, milky fur color. "Thank you on behalf of our Asha," said the owner, pulling Asha close with her leash to ensure she didn't wander off again. "Asha? That's a peculiar name for a canine," Pavel politely commented. "It was our daughter's choice. Ordinarily, Asha stays with her, but is with us temporarily. She's been rather mischievous lately, getting out of control and loitering everywhere. We will correct it, though, and secure her on a leash so she learns not to disturb people during their pressing matters." Pavel looked into Asha's eyes. A pleading look lingered there. His heart swelled with compassion. Asha approached the human, but was jerked back as the leash was pulled yet again. Her tail vanished between her legs, her gaze fell to the floor, and her ears flattened to her head. After speaking with the woman, Pavel was left with a troubling sensation. Despite being a pet that was taken care of and fed, signs of jubilation were curiously absent. Pavel stumbled upon his former schoolmate's page on social media. She had shared pictures from numerous locations she had traveled to for work. Pavel applauded her exciting position and inquired about Asha. The woman parroted the same excuses her mother had mentioned before. "No time to pamper the pet. She's properly looked after by my folks. wanders freely, much happier in the countryside, she wrote to Pavel, who was unable to hide his distress. He shared his first encounter with Asha, specifically where and under what circumstances. His old schoolmate was dumbfounded. She was clueless that her pet was allowed to roam outdoors and honestly thought Asha stayed in the safety of the house. She vanished from social media for some time. Presumably, she was having a heated discussion with her parents. Upon returning, she begged Pavel to assist her, claiming that for her pet to travel abroad, a passport was necessary. With her parents unwilling to undertake the city journey for the pet's sake, she pleaded with Pavel to step in. She promised to finance everything and reward him for his service. Although Pavel grumbled, he consented to her request, insisting that she only compensated the vet and that he would lend a hand purely out of benevolence. The following day, he visited Asha and was confronted by his classmates' disgruntled parents. The mother, notably irritated, banished the dog from their summer kitchen, tossed the leash to Pavel, and departed. The father then unveiled the source of his wife's frustration. It appeared their daughter had sparked a massive uproar the night before, demanding her pet be given to her. He lamented not handing over Asha immediately, which had resulted in their daughter's unhappiness and her abrupt decision to leave the country. Why fret over her pet? They should be concerned about themselves. And now he was stuck in the middle of this. Agree or not, if she needed this dust-catching creature that much, she would have collected it ages ago. Guided by wisdom, Pavel stayed silent. He refrained from taking sides or offering his opinion on the matter. Pavel elected to bring Asya into the city, securing international regulation documents necessary for foreign travel. Fortunately, Asya was already immunized, eliminating the need for additional procedures. She felt safe under Pavel's care, comfortably nestling against his leg for reassurance. She was somewhat apprehensive about the veterinary visit, but withstood it bravely, comforted by the soothing murmurs of her savior. Their primary hurdle was figuring out the logistics of transporting the animal. The owner found an individual willing to carry the pet across the border in their vehicle. However, making contact proved to be a temporary setback. Pavel was unable to assist, as his duties during the busy farming season required his undivided attention, especially towards his hardworking staff. With this, Pavel enlisted the help of his city-based contacts. One friend, right on the verge of going on vacation, agreed to transport Asha to the appropriate location, commencing their extensive journey. Up to this point, Asha had never roamed further than the local park, and now had to traverse thousands of kilometers with unfamiliar individuals. Pavel fitted Asha with both a leash and a muzzle for issue-free transportation. The pet's bowl was deemed unfit due to her outdoor stay, which led Pavel to purchase a new one. Their parting was bittersweet. Asha had grown fond of Pavel in such a short span. The man refrained from returning the pet to his friend's parents, fearing they'd lose her again. Hence, he chose to keep Asya under his care. Asya slept in the corridor, still vastly more comfortable than spending bitter cold nights in the street under a canopy. She looked upon the man with admiration, viewing him as her hero. "Soon you'll be united with your owner," Pavel tried to reassure Asha. But his words fell on deaf ears. To her surprise, she was confronted with an unusual vehicle and unfamiliar people, leaving her puzzled and worried. Asha was confused about why she was being left again so suddenly, especially after her recent rescue. Right until the last moment, Asha clung to the hope that Pavel might reconsider. She gazed at him pleadingly, whimpering softly and sticking close to his feet. Nevertheless, Pavel placed her in the unfamiliar vehicle and bid her goodbye. Asha struggled to adjust to the new individuals. They occupied the front seat, occasionally pausing to provide her water in short breaks. Amidst Asha's growing confusion, she was moved to yet another vehicle with another stranger. This journey with him was lengthier. He allowed her to walk and ensured she received water and meals at 3 intervals. Resting in the car overnight, Asha found herself entering an ever-evolving new city come dawn. The unique aromas intrigued her, and unexpectedly, a familiar scent bubbled up. Asha's head jerked from left to right, finally becoming still. She couldn't believe her gaze. Her owner was approaching, the same person who had once rescued her as a scrappy young pup from the shelter. Asia's heart came to a standstill. Then impulsively, she flung herself forward, pulling on the leash with such urgency that her male caregiver lost his grip. Asha dashed toward her beloved owner, her body propelled on all fours. The excited creature hopped into the arms of her owner, staggering her slightly. The woman managed to secure Asha, who was squirming and whining with joy, desperately trying to cover every accessible part of her with affectionate licks. "I'm overjoyed to see you too," laughed the owner. After a quick chat with the transporter, they finally returned home. As Asha strolled along with her head held high, the unfamiliar landscape felt like her own personal domain. The owner's apartment was compact and felt overcrowded to Asha, but she was thrilled. The most significant part was that her owner had retrieved her. Plenty of trials awaited Asha. Her owner frequently traveled for work and couldn't always extend the invitation to Asha, so Asha was either lodged in a pet hotel or cared for by a neighbor. Nevertheless, she patiently awaited her owner's return every time, confident she wouldn't be left permanently. The woman acknowledged that amidst significant life adjustments, the presence of old friends should never be minimized. The enthusiastic greeting of a pet upon returning home is a joy hard to match. A faithful pet always has time for companionship, accepting you unconditionally, irrespective of the missteps you may make. However, palming off your responsibilities isn't fair. Even the closest individuals may disappoint, neglecting the pet and consequently endangering its life.